Tom Carvelis, born in Athens, Greece, 1906, emigrates to the U.S., and in 1929, as a young man, borrows $15 from his girlfriend, Agnes, to purchase an ice cream truck. Yes, folks, in 1929, they cost $15. And he did okay. Drove the truck from Hartsdale to Yonkers every day in the summer. Children ran out with their parents' money and bought the frozen ice cream. He made a small living. He was doing okay. Basically, he was going to live a nice lower middle class life as an ice cream salesman, and he married Agnes so he didn't have to pay her back the $15. But in 1934, on Memorial Day, Tom Carvelis watched his truck break down in Yonkers. It broke down. Not only did it break down, the refrigeration stopped. Not only was he going to lose the sales from Memorial Day weekend, which was big to him, but his entire inventory was going to melt. Those days, folks, if you were an ice cream salesman, all your wealth went into the inventory. He was about to lose it. So he maneuvered his truck, pushed it basically, next to a pottery store in Yonkers into the parking area. The man who owned the pottery store was a nice man. He was nice. He brought out the electric cord, got an extension, so he would have some electricity, some refrigeration. But the ice cream continued now to slowly melt. But if you've ever been to Yonkers, it's a crowded place, lots of people in the street. He opened up the doors to his ice cream truck, and an amazing thing happened. People in the street walked up to him to buy this slightly softer ice cream because until then, ice cream was always frozen. Less than 2 days, he sold out his entire inventory. Wait a minute, thought Tom Carvelis. Wait a minute, I have something here. So, he bought the pottery store that gave him the electricity. He bought the parking lot, and he opened the first in America outdoor ice cream retail place, and he called it after himself, except he had anglicized his name to Tom Carvel. And in 1989, he sold the business for $80 million. Apocatastasis, folks. Abracadabra. I'm going to bring you up someone now, our last speaker. But really, I just love this one. We were trying to figure out before the meeting how we met. We have no idea. How someone from South Carolina met a Wall Streeter. We had no idea how that meeting ever happened, who referred it, how it took place, but I've known her for a very long time. And it's probably one of the most valued relationships in my life. Debbie Stevenson, 1976, opened a real estate brokerage, highly successful. $1 million producer first year, had her own agency, had 5 agents. She was doing great. As the head of a committee of South Carolina realtors, they decided to do something charitable, 1982. And they opened up a camp for kids with cancer called Camp Happy Days. And what became for Debbie a part-time 501c3 little deal as she met the parents, as she met the children. Because let's face it, folks, cancer for kids should never happen. And sometimes sometimes I think God is a son of a bitch. Because cancer to children should be off limits. It got into Debbie's heart. What she did for these families, what she gave to the kids, was what Debbie really did, is she gave them hope. She likes to say, the child gets disease, the family gets the cancer. That's entirely true. That is absolutely true. From 1982 to 2005, this little tiny 501c3 grew into a multi-million-dollar budgeted 501c3 that was helping hundreds and possibly thousands of kids with cancer. She made a difference in this world. She made a difference in their lives, an incredible difference. And then her husband, Charlie, got cancer in 2005. So she had to take a leave of absence. They went up to Boston for proton radiation treatment, and she stayed with her husband for months until at least he was deemed that he can go home. When she got back to South Carolina to go to work, the board of directors told her, "You're fired. And we don't think you're handling the books and records correctly." And they threw her under a bus. Make no mistake, no one built this 501c3 but Debbie. And she did it mostly by herself, on the strength of her personality, on the strength of her character. She built it herself. To accuse her of any financial malfeasance is so disgusting that I don't even have an expression for it. It's the most honorable human being I've ever met in my life. She called me up in 2005. We had a little conversation. She was down. 23 years she dedicated to an organization that threw her out the door the first chance they got. And I sure was sympathetic, but I told her, when you're going through hell, keep going. And she has the kind of spirit, perseverance, and determination where she kept going. And at the end of this hell, she found a new 501c3 called CourageousKidz. And from 2005 till now, she has helped thousands of kids with cancer. She grew it far bigger than Camp Happy Days. She continues to grow it. She continues to have an incredible impact on these kids. Before she leaves today, I'm handing her a check. I would like to see many of you do the same thing, folks. Apocatastasis, abracadabra. This is one of the greatest examples you'll ever see. Debbie Stevens.
That's a lot, but let me tell you what happened. She came to camp the first time. She had just graduated from law school. She was going to be in charge of our swimming, the lifeguard.
That's actually not how it happened. Oh, I had just graduated from college, and while I was a lifeguard, I came to be a counselor. And this is the definition of abracadabra right here, live and in person. The day that camp started, the person who was supposed to run the waterfront program never showed up. And she said, what am I going to do? I need somebody who has like a lifeguard certification who can run the program. I was standing next to her when she said it.
So the first child, she was talking to somebody, and a little girl came out and said, could you hold this for me, please? And she said, sure, honey. Not really realizing what she's holding. And the child proceeded to go up to the top of the high dive and jump off and couldn't swim. And what she was holding was the child's leg.
Her prosthetic leg. She said, would you hold this? And I was talking to this person, and I said, sure. And I reached over, and I was like...
That was her first introduction. So we do many, many things. Our goal is to give hope, the magic of hope to these children and families. I believe the child has a disease, the family has cancer. You would identify with that. It affects them all. So we serve the whole family as a whole. We do many, many things. We do, like next week, I'm doing a fairy hair party for children, for little girls. Can't wait. This is the fairy hair. And I've got Tinkerbell coming. We give the magic of childhood I've got a mom's retreat planned soon, and that's, if you keep the moms, regress. Dads really care, and they feel like they protect their family, and it's so frustrating for them when they can't protect their family. Moms just go and do it. So I have to tell you where I got the inspiration. I was made the chairman of this Make America Better project for a small town in Somerville, in South Carolina, and the president came to me and said, would you be the director of this committee? And I said, sure. But now that I are one, what is it? And she said, oh, it's nothing. It's just something to show the community. And not only do you like to do business with them, but we like to do something good for the community, so do something. And so I found out committee gets all the boards of the nation for the best projects. So I figured we'd just go ahead and do that. So I took out a local nursing home, and we had to document everything, and we did what we do. We won first place in the nation. So then I was made a state chairman, and I thought, okay, we'll go ahead and win now, because we compete against all the other boards of the nation for the best projects. So we did that. So then I read an article in McCall's magazine called We Have to Do Something for Ted. It was a little girl in Rochester, New York, and she had a brain tumor. Her dad went all over the nation looking for a cure, and it wasn't. And then he was listening to the Today Show on TV, and he heard a woman from Michigan say that she'd started a camp for children with cancer. He said, well, that's what I will do. And I thought, well, that's what I will do. I am the worst camper you ever saw in your life. I'm afraid of snakes, I'm afraid of spiders, and so why do we have all those things? But I would do that. So I went out to Girl Scout plantation, talked to them there. I was so blissfully ignorant. And I'm there at lunchtime, and I'm seeing what they're feeding these children, thinking, I would never feed my children this. And then I casually said, well, if I do this, who would direct the camp? And they said, you do. I said, I do? Don't you want someone that knows what they're doing? They said, you'll do just fine. And that's how it all began. So we started with 15 kids the first year. I don't know how I got the first 15. I put it out there from all over the state. I've got goosebumps. I can tell you something what's happening. So I'm doing this Very Hair party. My donor is one of the first moms we ever had. She's coming to the party, but her child was one of my first kids ever at the first camp. And when I did the mom's retreat, her son, who is now 53, he was 8 at the time, was going to be a band. He's bringing his band to entertain our moms. Is that serendipity? It's just amazing. Well, I get goosebumps every time I think about it because it's so incredible, the relationships we have. Many of my volunteers are now my past campers. Many of my donors are my past campers or their parents. It's so exciting. So Heather, step in because I forgot what I was supposed to tell them.
So I showed up on the scene in year 2 of Camp Happy Days. And as Debbie talked about, she had read about other camps for kids with cancer.
We were number 9 in the nation.
I had read an article that was in Life magazine, when there was still such a thing, about a camp for kids with cancer in California, and I was very, very moved by the article, and I happened to mention it to my mother, and I said that I was going to track these people down, and I was going to go volunteer at their camp in California. So, this is long before the internet. I actually had to, get a phone book and do some research and call 411 and get a phone number and leave a message on somebody's answering machine, and maybe eventually they called me back. So what happened is that I wanted to volunteer at this camp, and so I left my name and number, and somebody called me back and said, oh, thanks, we're just finishing last year's stuff, we'll be in touch in the spring. So an interesting thing happened at that camp. The woman who started it was actually the sister-in-law of Dustin Hoffman. So Dustin Hoffman's, had and she started it because she had a child who had cancer. So Dustin Hoffman got very involved in their program and got Hollywood very involved in their program. And so they had a long, long list of people who wanted to volunteer and donate their time. So by the time I raised my hand and said, don't forget about me, they were like, oh, well, if you want to fly out here, we'll give you an interview. And if you pass the interview, then you can fly back here and meet 27 other people. And I just thought to myself, this is a long time ago. I'm in law school. I'm young. I don't have the kind of money to do this. And I was disappointed because I thought it would be a really interesting thing to do. So I told this story to my mother. serendipity being what it is, the next day, my mother lived in Charleston, South Carolina, in the Charleston Post and Courier was a tiny little picture of a woman surrounded by 5 kids, and it said, Camp Happy Days celebrates spring. And it said, Deborah Stevenson, the director of Camp Happy Days, has a spring reunion after her first summer camp for kids with cancer. So my mother cuts the article out of the newspaper, puts it in an envelope with a stamp, because that's how you communicated back then. And she sends it to me, and she says, turns out we have one of these camps down here, maybe you want to volunteer here. So I call this one up on the phone, and about 2.5 hours later, we finally hang up, and I'm on my way to South Carolina to volunteer at Camp Happy Days as a counselor / waterfront director.
That's my nickname is Flash. Her nickname is Sport.
Everybody has a nickname.
Yeah, no one really get the nickname.
Flash is pretty obvious why. This is such a toned down version of Flash. Flash is usually wearing things that light up and sparkle. Sometimes there's music involved. Often there's a headband that has a lightning bolt on it. This is a very, very toned down version of what Flash looks like. I got my name Sport because I showed up from New York City down in South Carolina. Also really not a great camper, you don't know what I was thinking. And every crazy thing that could happen to me happened to me. Every trick they could pull on me, they pulled on me, and apparently I was a very good sport, which is how I got my nickname as Sport. So Debbie and I started working together more closely, and I was very supportive of everything she did, and she eventually asked me to become her co-director at the camp program, which I was very happy to do. But we are incredibly different people. So, this is like party on the right, business on the left. So I had now graduated from law school, I had started practicing law, and Debbie was like, oh, I want to take these kids on a trip somewhere. And I was like, do we have releases for them all to sign? Do we have liability insurance? Are we sure that the parents have all signed the permission forms? Party, business. Everything you would ever ask Debbie, any child would ask to do something, Debbie's answer was always yes. My answer was always no. Somehow we would come to an agreement on how things were going to proceed. But
I hate the word no. I hate rules. I like parameters.
I'm totally a rule follower.
And I'm not.
So we are not at first glance a good pairing of people who work together on a regular basis. But somehow it turned out to be perfect. So in 2005, when Debbie did take a leave of absence to go and be in Boston and care for her husband, when she came home and was told that she had been relieved of her duties, no one was, well, next to you, maybe no one was more surprised than me. And Debbie kind of called, I think, to say goodbye, like, I understand that you're very involved in the organization, and I'm very sad, that I'm not going to, be able to work with you. I hope to maybe start something else.
It was just awful.
And we'd become very good friends at this point as well. And I said, well, without you, there's no me. Like, I'm not interested in, participating in an organization that would have decided that you're not who they want to lead the organization.
Can I stop 1 second though? You know why? Because where else could you have a water gun fight and us get the fire engine and us come in on top of the fire engine with our hoses? We won the water gun fight. Now where could you do that up here? It's all in perspective. So I want to say something you said a little earlier ago. A lot of organizations, like if you need financial aid, you usually need it now. And a lot of organizations, they have to go through a committee, you have to sign a form, you have to get more, they do all this stuff. I do it right away, because I know my family's intimately. If you're, as Flash, I'm not Miss Debbie. The reason I'm Flash, and we have nicknames, I don't like children calling me by my first name. I want the respect of, I want fun. I don't want to call me Miss Debbie, I don't want to be Miss Heather, I don't want that. So with the nicknames, there's familiarity and there's comfort right away. You're not formal. So with financial, I love the financial aid we do because...
Well, can we just talk a little bit about how Courageous Kids came to be? So Debbie and I, the first summer that there was a camp that we did not participate in was a very difficult time for her. So she came up here to New York, and we spent a week together out at the beach, sort of commiserating about where we thought we should have been, etc. And she said, I think I'm ready to start something new. And I said, well, here I am. And so Debbie formed KourageousKidz. She asked me to become the president of the board.
September, I was let go, and January 5th, I started over again. I met with the I got goosebumps. Met with the Secretary of State, and she's helped me. Within an hour and a half, I had a new charter, and I said, her name was Carolyn. I said, Carolyn, why are you helping me? She's a tiny little woman. She said, I don't know. I think I was supposed to. And she said, I got a lot of calls. They said I had mismanaged money. I'd taken an illegal raise. I hadn't done any of that, but they didn't have minutes. They didn't take any minutes during the meetings. Hello. So anyway, I gave you all a sheet in front of you from my CPA, and our organization, 97.7% goes to the families we serve. Take that. And then I also put my last newsletter. I hate to write, but I can't let anyone else write for me because it's all personalized for me. As I said, I love what I do. And we make a significant difference. We have many ways that we can get help, that people can help us.
So we're a very small organization. We have a very big impact. And what differentiates us from a lot of other not-for-profit organizations is the personal touch, is the way that we work directly with our families, where we don't have the whole committee process where you have to go through a lot of hoops. As Debbie said, when somebody is in crisis, they need help then. And so we help our families in lots of different ways. We do a financial aid program. To be clear, we never give a family money. We don't ever give out any money. But what we do is when we have a family who is in crisis, right? So much of their disposable income has to go to, fighting cancer.
And the mothers can't, many times the mothers can't work. You have a lot of single families.
And so people need help then. So somebody might call and say, I don't know what to do, my washer just broke. We might buy them a new washing machine, but we don't give them the money. We buy a washing machine from somebody that we've worked with in the past who gives us the best price possible and goes and installs it for them. We solve the problem for them. When we have a family that has to travel, for example, to MD Anderson, which we have right now, for very specific cancer treatment for their child, they're down there, they don't know what they're doing. We will send them DoorDash gift cards so that they can order food into the hospital.
Gas cards to get there, give them a visa so they can buy food.
We try to work very closely with the families on helping them in their times of crisis, trying to get through the worst of it, and so that they can focus on what they need to with their family, and we can try to alleviate some of the stress that comes along with this. So it is something that we really pride ourselves on, and the personal touch is right here. The definition of abracadabra. She makes so much magic happen in the lives of these families, it's incredible.
They bless me.
But I just want to give one example. We had a child who, as many of you probably know, when you have chemotherapy, one of the things that happens a lot is that you lose your hair. So this can be a very difficult and dramatic thing to anybody in their life who has this happen. I think it's probably a little bit worse for women because women generally don't choose to shave their heads or go out in the world as bald, right? So we had a young girl who had lost her hair and was very upset about it. And so, amongst other things, Debbie shaved her head in order to accompany this child and make her feel like she wasn't alone. This is a woman who really likes her hair, let me just say. Like, her shaving her hair was such an incredible gift to this child. But then, it doesn't just stop there. The child had a junior prom to go to and was extremely nervous about it. So Debbie hired a wig maker to make her a wig that would look like anything she wanted it to look like. She sent her to a place that sold prom dresses, and she was able to pick out whatever prom dress she wanted. She didn't have a date, so we got one of our younger, super cute volunteers to show up in a limousine that Debbie arranged for to escort this young girl in her dress with her beautiful wig on to the prom. That girl's life was changed that night. She felt seen. She felt important. She was a princess. That's one example. I have thousands more I can tell you about
tell you something
personal
funny
magic that she has done.
We serve the whole state, so there's this one, we did Days of Magic, which is a shopping spree and where they want to eat and this and that. And I had a family way out in Orangeburg, which is like 50 miles away from Charleston. And they didn't have any transportation. I identified a lot of these, nothing's impossible. I was told many times I was out of touch with reality. And there we go. So I hired an airplane to go get them. I had a friend that, so I had to meet me at an airport. The airplane landed, they'd never flown in their life before. And they flew them back to Charleston for me. And then we flew them back home. And then another time I had someone pick them up in the middle of nowhere with a limousine. You know, just the magic. I love doing the different things you can do with magic that they'll always remember. And it's just, I get fun out of it also, you know? You probably know me for 5 seconds and know if I did something stupid, you would think anything of it, wouldn't you? Because it seems normal to me. It just seems, if you don't think it, you can't make it happen. And you just have to, nothing's impossible. And if it's impossible, you do what you can to make it work. If it doesn't work, then you dish it and you go in another direction.
So let me bring us back to business for a second. So I am the president of the board. We pride ourselves on being tremendous fiduciaries of all of the donations that we receive. We are, of course, a 501c3 not-for-profit certified by the IRS, so all tax deductions, all contributions are fully tax deductible. As Debbie said, she sent around a letter from our accountant who certifies to the state of South Carolina that 97.6% of all funds raised go directly to our families. And it's an incredible thing. We are in the top percentage of everybody in the state of South Carolina.
Probably in the nation.
Yes. Even though we're based in South Carolina, we often have kids that come from other places that participate in our events. All of this magic does cost money. So we are constantly in fundraising mode. As the president of the board, it's one of my principal responsibilities. I'll tell you that since the day I became the president of the board, I also became the first donor at CourageousKidz to get us off the ground. I became a partner in my law firm. I do well financially. I'm able to support financially. But I also haven't taken a Christmas or a birthday or an anniversary gift from anybody since you started CourageousKidz. And every single person that I know that would give me a gift instead makes a donation to CourageousKidz on my behalf. Fundraising is very important to us. We had a donor who passed away who left us a nice, tidy sum of money. It was about $160,000 in her will. We invested that money. We set up a fund. That fund we named after one of our board members, right, who had a child who subsequently died of cancer. His child, his name was Aiden Lane, and Aiden, one of the magical things Debbie did, this little boy just loved Legos. So every time Debbie would show up at their house for anything, she would bring him a new set of Legos. So we named the fund the Aiden Lane Lego Fund, meant to commemorate in his name the ability to use this fund for financial aid. The money is invested. We have a tremendous rate of return, despite the fact that we take money out every single month to use for financial aid. That fund now has over $240,000 in it. So we take our fiduciary responsibilities very, very seriously. And so we are, in fact, always in fundraising mode. And so I want to make sure that everybody knows that our organization is Courageous Kids with a Z. Courageous, K-I-D-Z.
Anybody
Incredibly important because there is another organization called CourageousKidz with an S. And we have had some situations where people have inadvertently donated to the wrong charity. I will say that they have actually, when we contacted them, given us the money because it was intended for us. That said, if you'd like to make a donation, www.courageouskidswithaz.com. And
We do so many things. We have Christmas coming up. We find donors. Let's say you're going to be a donor. I will give you a child's name, their story, their age, this, that, and they give you a list of 10 items not to exceed $300. Each donor usually spends $300 per child, and they either go on Amazon. If they're local, they bring the gifts to me and the family comes to me, or if they're upstate, they'll buy the gifts on Amazon and have it sent directly to it. But we help about 130 kids. Again, we help the siblings and the child with cancer because it affects all the family. It takes such a burden off that family's heart knowing that their children have Christmas. We do so many different things. The other day we had an event at Flight Adventure Park. It was a trampoline park, and I had 2 families there, and I said, well, let's just go to Texas Roadhouse and I'll treat you to dinner. It was just going to be dinner. Well, the one mom is a single mom, and her son is Johnny, and he was sitting across from the dad of the other child, and it was wonderful. And through this, the mothers were talking, and the one mom had to have a colonoscopy the next day, and the other mom has another health issue. We left when the mom that had to have the colonoscopy, the other mom said, what's her phone number? I want to call, I want to help her, because when she goes to do that, I know she has to have someone take care of Johnny. I mean, I just love the relationships we have. I took them to St. Croix for a mom's retreat because one of our moms owns the retreat, so we didn't have to pay for it. The moms had to pay their own flight, and then I took care of other expenses. But because the accommodations were free, it was like $12,000 to take 25 moms to St. Croix for 4 days. Because one of my mottos is, you know asking, you know receiving. So I ask ye, and then we receive. So we're a little different than most because I'm kind of out there, but I love what I do. If you help, you make a significant difference. One child, one family at a time. I know every one of them personally. I'm called at midnight sometimes, I'm called at 2 in the morning sometimes, but it's like, it's family. It's a blessing. So I thank you for leading. I don't know how we met, Stephen. I don't know why you had me come up here because I'm a little different, but I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Let's close with someone you all should know. His name is Leonard Cohen. Show of hands, who knows who he is? In fact, other than Bob Dylan and Paul Simon, give me someone in the music industry for the last 50 years more significant than Leonard Cohen. He is probably the most unusual apocatastasis abracadabra story I will ever tell. Born Montreal, just outside, 1934, Orthodox Jewish family, loved his father. His father was great. And his father died suddenly when Leonard is 9 years of age. As a kid, heartbroken. What he did is he took one of his father's ties, he cut open the back of the tie, and he wrote his father a poem, telling him how much he missed him. And he stuck it in the tie. And for the rest of his life, every single time he had depression, every time he was down, he wrote another sentence, another poem, based on what was causing him the pain at the time. Now, as far as I can tell, Leonard Cohen spent half his life depressed, and the other half in abject misery. But it made him a great writer. Songs like So Long Marianne. When did he write it? When he said so long to Marianne, his longtime girlfriend. Suzanne, sung by Judy Collins, who's actually in love with a friend's wife named Suzanne. By the time we get to 1979, think how many years that is from 34 when he was born. He had written a 150 verses of poem in the form of misery and pain. 150 verses. Jesus Christ, that's a lot of verses. And he decided to lock himself in a hotel room in 1979 and not come out till he had reduced all of this to one song. His magna opus, something that would be a legacy for him. 5 years, he whittled down 150 different poems to sing. He put it to very simple music, very typical of Leonard Cohen. Very, very simple music. And with excitement, he brought it to Columbia Records. That's who produced all of his songs. The head of Columbia Records told him, after 5 years of agonizing over this is shit. Quote, unquote. We'll release it in Europe. We're not going to release it in the US. It's shit. It won't sell. No one is going to buy this song. It's not rock, it's not folk, it's not anything. No one is going to purchase this record. Go on to something else. Apocatastasis. Abracadabra. Yes, Leonard Cohen went into a depression. Yes, he went to the Greek island of Ithera, where he wrote a lot of his depressive poems. Yes, he even went into a monastery. But he kept performing. And he kept performing this one song. Then in 1991, maybe he performed this song 500 times through those years. John Cale, head of the Velvet Underground, was sitting in the audience. And he loved the song. He didn't think it was shit. In fact, he liked it so much. He asked Leonard Cohen after the performance, I want this to be the cover of my next album. And John Cale called it, I'm Your Fan, devoted to Leonard Cohen. It'd be a great story if I could tell you the millions of copies this album sold. 8 people bought this album. 8 people. Not 800, not 8,000, not 8 million. 8 people bought the record by John Cale. One of them was a girl named Melissa in Brooklyn. No one knows her last name. No one even cares. Except that Melissa traveled a lot. So she needed a house sitter. So she decided to contact the son of a fairly famous musician named Tim Buckley. Son's name was Jeff Buckley. Jeff was an aspiring musician at that time, just starting up in the world. And he house sat for Melissa, who had a record player sitting there with one album on the record player. Well, Jeff Buckley was bored, so he played the record. Guess which record? What are the odds of this? Jeff Buckley loved it. Loved it. He loved John Cale's version. He thought it was a little bit dark. He could brighten it up, perhaps. But he loved it. So he recorded it in 1994. And I'm happy to tell you, it sold more than 8 copies. But not much more. The people started to listen to the song. It was a more upbeat version. And then a tragedy happened in 1997. Jeff Buckley, in those next 3 years, started to get a name for himself. He had a following. People loved him. He dies as a young man in a swimming accident in the Mississippi. So to commemorate his life, they began playing his album, Grace. where the cover song was, guess which one?
Hallelujah.
I work alone, shut up. They played it, and they played it, and they played it. All commemorating Jeff Buckley's life. Well, there were movie producers making an animated movie at that time who heard the Jeff Buckley commemorative song, and they decided they loved it. So what Leonard Cohen failed to do, and John Cale failed to do, and Jeff Buckley failed to do, a ridiculous movie like Shrek. Sid. Rufus Wainwright, who is actually the father of Leonard Cohen's granddaughter, sang it. And all of a sudden, having gone through hell, everybody was recording this song. Everybody. When I say everybody, I mean Bon Jovi, Katie Lang, Canadian tenors, Lucy Thomas. Everybody was singing. 300 artists recorded the song. Bob Dylan sang it on stage. Celine Dion sang it on stage. Everyone fell in love with the song, and in 2013 it was voted one of the most significant pieces of music in the last 100 years. And it goes something like this. I've heard there was a secret chord that David played, and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We all know the song. He went through hell, but when he came to the end of hell, there was a stairway to the highest mountain imaginable. The next time you drop into that hell, I wish for you that same stairway. Thank you.